All right, on tonight's episode of Python Papi, we're back inside our artificial intelligence course, and we're still doing our learning module. Let's have a look at what we went over tonight. Now, last night, if you recall, we went over the process of creating a hypothesis function for our advertising dollars spent equaling out to company sales. We're going to pick up where we left off. And so, again, the approach to solving this type of problem, we can try using a linear regression type of approach where we take this data and we just plot it. On the x-axis, we have advertising dollars spent, and on the y-axis we have sales. And you might want to try and just draw a line that does a pretty good job at trying to estimate this relationship between advertising and sales. And this is our plot here. You can see we have our y-axis sales, we have our x-axis advertising dollars spent, and then we have our line here separating the sales from the advertising dollars spent. And in this case, unlike before, we're not trying to separate the data points into discrete categories, but instead, in this case, we're just trying to find a line that approximates this relationship between advertising and sales. So that if we want to figure out what the estimated sales are for a particular advertising budget, we can just look it up in this line and figure out for X amount advertising, we would have Y amount of sales. And we could just try to make the estimate that way. And we could try and come up with a line, figuring out how to modify the weights using various techniques to try and make it up so that this line fits as well as possible. So with all of these approaches to try and solve machine learning style problems, the question becomes, how do we evaluate these approaches? How do we evaluate the various different hypotheses that we could come up with? Because of each of these algorithms will give us some sort of hypothesis, some function that maps inputs to outputs. And we want to know how well does the function work. That's where we're going to step into evaluating hypothesis. And we can think of evaluating these hypotheses and trying to get a better hypothesis as kind of like an optimization problem. In the optimization problems we can recall from before, we would either try to maximize some objective function by trying to find a global maximum, or we were trying to minimize some cost function by trying to find some global minimum. And in this case of evaluating these hypotheses, one thing we might say is that this cost function, the thing we are trying to minimize, we might be trying to minimize what we call a loss function. And this is the definition of a function that expresses how poorly our hypothesis performs. Now that's where we're going to leave it tonight. We did go over a lot more, but I'm not going to dive into everything right now, but we'll keep you posted as usual. But now, this is the Python Papi. You guys stay Gucci.